Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Bloodlands, Season 1, Episode Dose. So, if I had mixed feelings about the pilot, I feel that the second episode was to state that it's like, you know what, like, I would really much give this show a shot. Like, I know I've kind of been, like, burnt out by, like, detective shows because normally there's so much to go on and state and talk and whatever, to the point of me going on and having to jot everything down, it seems, uh, to try and remember all of it because there's so much going on. But I also would state that the way that this episode ends, I'm like, what? Is this seriously how this show is gonna go? I'm like, okay, all right, let's run with this. Let's see where this goes, and hopefully they stick with uh, what they kind of ended with in this second episode, because I'm so intrigued now. The second episode was to give us this cliffhanger, and to where, like, in the first episode, like, I could take it or leave it with this show, but now seeing more of this story, I'm really hooked. I'm really interested. So hopefully a lot of other people are, because then I would go on and continue this series. Not stating that there has to be some goal or some like, oh, I need X number of things before I go on and do this again. I'm just kind of re-going through this just to see if people want me to talk about it again. If not, then the ship has sailed. But anyways, so this second episode, the second episode is to go on and mainly focus on Pat Keenan and the connection to Pat Keenan to the people who had gone on to be dead, who of course are to possibly have been Joe Harkin, David Corey, Simon Quinlan, who is to be Father Simon, and then possibly Emma Bronick. So we go into this episode, and we, by the end of it, are going to seemingly find out who Goliath is. And I was like, they better go in this direction, because I would be so amped or excited if they went in that way. And also, I like what Corey ends up doing in this episode to really just try and get this case to be re-brought up here. And that I thought was really, like, the fascinating part of this episode. But so, come to find out, I thought that Tori, the nurse, that was going to be the teacher to Izzy in her, like, doctor class, like, I thought that was all going to be some throwaway character Tori was, but it seems that they are actually bringing Tori in. And also, Tori is to go on and have a connection to the Goliath case, which I was like, man, all right, like, they're really, like, having so many pieces to this puzzle and all this thing to be connected. And when really looking at it, there's so few episodes of this show, like, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. So with that said, I know, of course, I was to have possibly gone on and stated a number of apps and whatever to have gone on and seen the show, but you know, time has passed. Some time has changed, and so I can go on and give you a list of a number of different apps that you can possibly go on and watch this show for. So if you are, of course, to have a Google Play Store within your phone app, you can go on in there, in fact, a app called Doxy, Doxcy, and you can see Bloodlands for absolutely free. I do also realize that through Google, I know that there is some Acorn app that exists that you can go on and not only watch Bloodlands, but I believe Mercury's Law. Maybe that's also on Acorn. I'm not sure. But anyways, you could go on to Doxy, Doxcy, and watch this show for absolutely free. There could, of course, also be other apps. Like, of course, if you can go into a Google Play Store, you can search the words Play UHD. So that's two separate words. And you can go on and find an app that has the logo of Fox HD Movies. You can download that app. And you can go on to hopefully see Bloodlands there. Or if not, you can see a number of new releases and a bunch of stuff for absolutely free. And then I would go on to possibly recommend an app called Yes Movies, or hopefully some equivalent to Yes Movies. I'm not quite sure that this is going to be easily available through the Google Play Store, but you can probably go through a Google search and hopefully find Yes Movies for absolutely free, as well as its content provided within it. So yeah, so with that said, that is to just go on and want to lead me into spoiler territory for this episode. Hopefully, I'm going to go on and remember every single bit of this, but then also I'm going to be thumbing through certain kind of detailish notes because there's a lot of different technical words within this episode, because of course it is. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoiler territory. And so tell me how you felt about Bloodlands if you were to have gone on and seen the whole season in one sitting, because you're like, yeah, like I really liked this show. Or maybe you just went on and was like, okay, this show looks interesting. Let's check this out now. So, because you can if you go on to a number of apps of which that I've already listed. So, and I think they do list that this show was available on Acorn, whatever that means. Is that like, I don't know if that's like a feed app, because I didn't bother going into it because I'm like, I could care less. Like, if I can find this move, or if I can find the show somewhere convenient that's free, then I'm watching it there. So with that said, let's go on into that double 5 time territory, because about that time yet again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you spoil this episode. So, with that said, we are to go on and realize that the Goliath murders are to be connected to the Keenan case that, of course, Tom is working on. And so we immediately have us think that it's like, well, Tom is obviously going to work on this case because it's connected to the Keenan case also. So, like, he should just go right back on and work on this case, right? Come to find out, we, of course, have Jackie, who, of course, is Tom's boss, who is just like, nope, like, you're not working on this case. So, instead, we go on to have Jackie mention to Tom that he is going to go on and work the hotel case, which is still the Keenan case. And so Jackie's also having his Tom's partner, who is McGovernor. It's been a while since I've had to state any of these names, so I might be thumbing through to remember any number of these people. So she, of course, is going to be working the island case. So we go on to have Tom, who goes to the hotel, and he is in like full like hazmated, almost like suit, like the guys that we kind of see in the back here. That are all wearing this white. He's wearing the same thing. So Tom, of course, is asking about cameras, is to go on to find out at the back of this hotel there is this like kind of hidden key to where anybody can go on and get into this if they know this combination. So we then have Tom, who makes his way to Keenan's room to have a number of people all look through Keenan's things, his stuff, and come to find out one of the people who are to be kind of covered head to toe here, as Tom has asked him, it's like, well, hey, like he evidently has like some kind of medication here. Like, what are these blue pills? And the detective, or the I'm gonna go with detective. The detective goes on and obviously states, is like, well, like, you know what these little blue pills look like, so come on, like, put it together. And Tom is like, oh, so it's like Viagra? And it's like, bingo. So come to find out, whoever Keenan was to be there with was to obviously have an affair with this person, and more than likely it could have been a woman, could have been a man, could have been a goat for all we know. So we, of course, go on and have Tom, who is questioning Keenan about who he was to go on and be there with in this hotel, because obviously whoever it was had to have been Goliath. So Tom, of course, is asking Keenan about, like, well, hey, who was it? Was it a man? Was it a woman? And Keenan is to have his lawyer present, and really Keenan is saying nothing. So then we have Tom, who is to be desperately grabbing this photo of the Harland and Wolff shipyard, and we have Tom that is asking Keenan, it's like, well, hey, like, does the Harland and Wolff shipyard, does it have any connection to you? Like, how is this, like, area, like, how is it significant? And again, Keenan says nothing. So we go on to, of course, have McGovern, uh, McGovern, who is to come to find out that this detective named Justin Bell, who is to have the nickname Dinger, it seems is to not be able to go any further into this island's case. And we, of course, have McGovern, who asks why. And so it seems that Dinger is to mention that it is no longer like their jurisdiction, or like there is to be another like division that is coming in, taking over, and that, of course, is the ICLVR. And this is to be this like time team where I guess these guys are to take over when it seems that these bodies have been laying there for a very long time. And so they are to go on to be the ones to try and identify these bodies and get some kind of DNA, excuse me, to figure out who these all are so they can go on and tell the families that are affected by this. So we immediately have McGovern that is to know who the ICLVR is. So they end up coming in and they end up kind of taking over. So we go on to then have after this team is to go on this ICLR VR or ICLVR team, go on and figure out whose these bodies are. They go on and tell Miss Harrison and about, like, they had found Joseph's body, Joseph Harrison's body, and they end up going to Corey and telling him that they had found David Corey's body, and he ends up getting like a little box of like his possessions and so on and so forth. So we then have Tom, who comes back to then talk to a detective nicknamed Birdie, and Birdie is to mention that he was to look in to Keenan's information and look into Keenan's phone. And so come to find out, they were to find through this fitness app that this guy had that they on that day could figure out what location that this guy was in on that day. And so that, of course, was to lead Tom to find out from Birdie that Keenan was in this conference. And so we have Tom, who's just like, well, okay, like, how many, like, cameras do you have of this conference? And so he's like, okay, I got all the CCTV camera footage, but it clearly wasn't enough. So they then go on to try to find any cameras that are around the area that they can possibly try and find that would have footage of this person kind of leaving here. So we have Tom, who ends up going to this deli, this cafe, and he ends up talking to the cafe owner, and coincidentally, we had the cafe owner who on that day was to see this unusual bike. She ended up going on and taking a screenshot of it and of the license plate, and so they're kind of going on and looking into the plate. So we have them go on to track down this bike, and so they end up following it to find out that this bike is going to Mrs. Harson's place. And come to find out, by the time that they get there, both McGovern and Tom, we find out, or McGovern, that there is going to be an assassination attempt happening right in front of their eyes. So they go on to try and pull a gun on this guy who is pulling a gun on Miss Harson. And so this guy bolts. He runs off. They end up catching him and come to find out that this guy was tied to Keenan. And so we then have them go on to question, like, okay, why is Mrs. Harkin, like, why was this guy trying to assassinate her? And come to find out, Joseph was to have been running guns over the border, and so once Joseph had died, Miss Harkin had taken over the business, and so I guess that's why the assassination attempt was to happen, because we go on and find out that Keenan was to somehow be tied or connected to possibly all of these men somewhere or another who had all died, it seems. There's some kind of connection with these characters. So we then go on and have both both Tom and McGovern go on to see Corey and come to find out how David was connected to also Keenan, was that he was a weapons delivery person. And so like that was how like they were all connected together. So Tom, after going on and talking to Corey, ends up uh, ends up leaving with McGovern, and Corey finally looks through David's things and is to find this owl necklace. So we then have Izzy, who is at her nurse or her doctor's class, and she of course is talking to Tori, and we are to have Tori talking about how Izzy is doing really well, and so come to find out they are to kind of uh, go on to like have a meal together and talk things out, and they end up hearing over the news that the third body was to be Father Simon, which of course immediately they could have figured out, both Tom and McGovern, because they were to find out that they were three bodies and they were all taken out with 9mm uh, shots, like they were like assassination attempts. And like it seems that all three of them were to become to find out to all be men. And we even had a point where Jackie was to tell Tom, it's like, well, hey, like, I'm going to go on and have the ICL VR, like, personally go on and call you and tell you when they have news. And they didn't. They couldn't have been bothered. But then Jackie is to go on and tell Tom the news about, like, well, it looks like all three of these bodies are all male, and it's too bad the ICLVR didn't go on and contact you with any of this news. So we go on to have McGovern that talks to Dinger at this place. And so while Dinger and McGovern are kind of talking about the fourth person, who is possibly Emma, Dinger makes the conspiracy that maybe Emma was to try to make herself disappear and somehow be connected to this case. That there could be a lot of ways to try to get rid of yourself, and maybe Emma had found some way to go on and do that. So come to find out through all of these through all this camera footage, we have Birdie who goes on and finds out that there is to be a car that both Keenan and some black-haired woman are both in together, and they immediately assume that has to go on and be Goliath. And so now they're going on and desperately needing to go to Keenan to just be like, okay, like, who is this woman with you? Like, tell me who it is, because this is obviously Goliath. And so Tom, of course, is pressing Keenan for this information, and Keenan does not want to give this up. So we then turn around and just have Tom here, who is to spend time with his daughter Izzy at this rugby match. and it seems that there was to be this extra ticket. So Tori ends up going on in the place of whoever was to not have been able to go. So we go on to have both Tori and both Tom kind of talking things out and like talking about rugby. And it seems that at some point Tom was to have a interest in being in sports, but an injury kind of took him out of that, and so he went on to just become a an officer. So after the rugby match is all over and done with, we then have both Tom and Tori still like talking it out. We even had at one point where Izzy was to ask Tori when they were like alone together. Izzy asked Tori, "It's like, well, hey, are you single? Because my dad is, because my mom's dead." So, and it's starting to feel like both Tom and Tori might end up together. It seems because it seems like there's some chemistry there. It seems uh, they might be good for one another, but who knows with the way this episode ends. So, come to find out, while Tom and Tori are just talking, they lose place of Izzy, and now they're looking for her. And come to find out, we have this van that had grabbed Izzy, but then kind of tosses her out. And so now Tom is kind of hugging onto Izzy as she is to go on and explain what had happened to her, that she had been abducted. And so Tom is trying to go on and comfort Izzy and is to kind of stay home for a day to just kind of watch over Izzy. So we we also had it where Jackie was to want McCarran being watched over, and to not really like monitor her or have like a stakeout on her, but to just kind of have her be protected, because who knows if there's going to be another assassination attempt on her life. But so while Tom is home, he ends up getting a message that ends up being Pat Keenan, who is to call and say it's like, well, hey, like, hopefully you enjoyed that rugby game last night, and maybe you shouldn't go on and go to another one because it could be too dangerous and so on. So, like, we have Keenan that is basically calling Tom and threatening uh, not only his life but also the life of his daughter. I just realized this image is probably uneven. Oh well, don't really care. I think the logo is uneven, but anyways. So we come to find out that Tori is to make her way to her mother to then give Tori's mother the news that Father Simon is to be Tori's father, and that they had finally found Father Simon's body. And Tori's mother starts to cry, and so does Tori. So, and I was like, wow, that's a really like interesting, like, so all these people are just all connected, and there might be just some like hidden thing of how they were all like together in some way. So we then have McGovern, who goes back to that same farmer trying to figure out how anybody could go on and get to that little island and had buried those people. And so the farmer is to go on and point out to a guy that's on this boat, and I believe is the harbor master, is I think is what McGovern, I think, ends up saying some odd like thing. So we have the farmer that is mentioned to McGovern. It's like, well, hey, like if you're gonna go on and meet that guy, like be warned that guy like hasn't really met a bar of soap in his life, so like this guy is gonna smell. So McGovern ends up getting information from this guy, and she ends up calling Tom to then state that there is a name that she has called Frank McPhee. So that, of course, turns around Tom to then go back to Corey's place. And so we have Tom that is to realize that McPhee is to be some kind of name of which, and plus also, Tom was to connect uh, the teacups, and so we had Tom who was to figure out that Corey is Frank McPhee. And so, but the further and further that Tom is to start to like spin around about this connection, he is to then realize that Corey had tried to reopen this case all on purpose, to leave this calling card and to leave this trail to hopefully lead to this case finally getting resolved. Because of course Corey had been upset that like his brother wasn't going to go on and get justice, and to the point to where Corey was to say it's like, well, hey, I'm going to go on and I'm going to solve this case and you watch me. And when Tom and McPhee are with Corey, they're like, this guy can't even get out of his house. Like, how is he going to go on and solve this case? And so we have Tom that is to bargain with McPhee, or Corey in this case, that if he is to go on and give up Goliath, that Tom will go on to take Corey to his brother's grave, the island. And so Corey agrees. Corey goes on with Tom to this island, and Corey was to have a recorder in his pocket the whole time. And so we go on to have Corey, who ends up going on to realize that he might have figured out who Goliath is all along, and we are to have Corey then realize that Tom could be Goliath. And so we go on to have Corey, who has this recorder who he is to pull out of his pocket, and Tom is then to state it's like, well, hey, like, no one is ever going to hear this conversation. And Corey's like, well, I don't care. It's like, well, like, it was just a peace of mind like thing anyways. And so all of a sudden we end up having Tom, who shoots Corey and lands him into this grave. I'm like, oh my god, is Tom Goliath? Is he really Goliath? Are we gonna find out in another episode that he is connected? And like a flashback maybe episode of all the pieces of the puzzle here and how it's all going to be tying into this? And wouldn't that be really interesting? I hope that's the way this show goes, because that would be really cool. But we also had the moment where Izzy was to mention to Tom how she's starting to get very scared. And Izzy is to be scared for the fact that Tom is going to go on and do anything to protect Izzy, and so that's what kind of scares her about what is all going on with this case and what is all going on with Izzy. So yeah, so that is to be the tail end of this episode. Hopefully I've gone on and remembered most of this. Because at the end of the day, I think it's about that time to just say I'm going to get out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about this episode. If you're like, yeah, like that Tom kind of cliffhanger thing is freaking awesome, or whichever. Maybe you went on, you're like, oh no, like Tom isn't the Goliath. Oh no, I couldn't have thought of that. Or reasonably, we can just go into the whole direction of, in the very next episode, we find out that Tom is not Goliath, but Tom was just going to kill off Corey anyways. But again, him killing somebody off, like, makes him look guilty, so it would be interesting to just have Tom try and go on and find all these people and try to get them to talk, just to have it all lead back to him, just to see if all these people are going to squeal on him. And that would really be an interesting story, to have all of these people already know who the Goliath is, but they could not go on and actually state anything. But so anyways, like, we could have obviously had, like, Tom, like, just kind of throw this case away and not go into it. But maybe again, that is to have just gone on and had Tom possibly kind of tried to like do this case to then have it lead somewhere else besides him. So anyways, with that said, I'm just gonna go on and get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.